This video is designed to kind of give you a very quick idea of the power of data analysis, just how incredibly powerful kind of Python coupled with new data can be, and how quickly and how easily you can create results that are actually very interesting. So let's go ahead and get started. Make sure you open up your Jupyter so you can see how I've set up my screen here. On the left is my Jupyter, and on the right is just the kind of hub where my Jupyter is. So this is where we downloaded our data into. You don't have to set your screen up like this. This is just so I can illustrate a few things that I'll be working on with you in this video. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to import something called pandas. So we type in the word import, I-M-P-O-R-T, pandas. Now, import in Python is effectively the same as installing an application on Windows. It allows you to take code, take algorithms that other people have already written, and just use them in your program. And we're going to use that a lot because we don't want to do every single bit of code. We don't want to write the code to do addition. We don't want to write the code to make charts. We want to kind of reduce the amount of code that we have to write to something that is very small. So the first thing we'll do is import pandas. And we can go ahead and click play on this snippet. So I'm going to go ahead and click play right here. And that'll go ahead and import this. Now, to keep things easy, I'm actually going to do everything in one snippet. So I'm going to keep rerunning that import over and over and over again. That's unnecessary, right? You only have to run it once for every one of your snippets, but I'm going to go ahead and keep everything together just so you have one nice block of code. So I have pandas, and what pandas actually lets us do is it lets us read in CSVs, analyze and visualize those. So it's really designed for describing the data within a wide variety of different data sets. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to read that CSV in, the data that we downloaded from Git. We're going to read it into Jupyter. We're going to let it actually do the analysis. So pandas, period, read underscore CSV. And then here's the first thing that I want to show you how it works. So the first thing we need to do is we have to figure out where the CSV is in relationship to our Jupyter file. So my Jupyter file, you'll see I named it lab1 using data. It's right here, lab1 using data. And you can see right above it is my data folder. So I have to figure out how to actually tell lab1 using data that my data is in the data folder. So the way I do that is I type in period and then /. And what that is it says, okay, lab1 using data, look in the same folder you are in. So it's going to look right here on this list for the word data. And of course, then I don't want to type in data. So this says, look for the folder called data in the same folder that you're in. And then within the folder data, I have to find the specific data folder that I want to download from. So in this one, you'll remember it's called Hip Hop Candidate Lyrics. So let's find Hip Hop Candidate Lyrics. Here we go. So this is the name of the folder right here. Now you can type this in or copy and paste it. So I'm going to hit Control-C on my keyboard. And then I'm going to click where I want it and hit Control-V. And it just copy and pastes it. Then I'm going to click in here. And this is the actual name of the CSV I want. So this is where the actual data is. This is what we looked at briefly in Excel. So I'm going to Control-C again. Click over here. Another slash. And I'm going to copy it. So this will give us the path to our CSV. Now, if I were to run this as is, I would receive an error. I'll go ahead and show you that. So you can see this is called a Unicode decode error. This type of error is very, very common, and we will run into it a lot throughout this course, but it's also very, very easy to fix. Essentially what happens is, depending on the computer that created a file, computers by default encode things differently. So for example, the letter A is stored as bits on a computer, and the bits on a computer that mean A can be different from computer to computer. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a very generic encoding strategy, one that tends to work on almost all computers, and that will tend to open almost all files. So you won't really have to worry about this as long as you put this encoding statement. So this is just something you'll have to know. There's no kind of guide to this. It's just something that works very, very regularly. Is this ISO 8859-1. So this is a very kind of general encoding strategy. Don't worry about it. Just always put this in when you're loading a CSV, and it will tend to work more frequently. So let's see if it works here. So I'm going to go ahead and click Run, and voila, it worked. So here we have the same data set that we looked at before, but now it's actually loaded in Pandas so that we can do some analysis. Now, the first thing though, is that this is all we've done here is displayed it. We haven't actually put it into a format where we can use it. So instead of having this line read just like this, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to save this data set into a variable. So you can call this whatever you want. I'm going to call it lyric data, but I literally made this up, this lyric data. You could make this your name, you could make this anything in the world. And I'm going to set it equal to this actual CSV. Now, when I click play again, I'm no longer going to see this, because now what I'm telling Jupyter is don't print this to the screen. Instead, save it as this. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. You'll see now nothing shows up. Now, if I want to actually look at this, it's really easy. I can type in lyric data, and when I run this, now it will show me, right? Because I've now saved this into lyric data, and I'm telling it to print lyric data out to the screen. So I can still take a look at this if I want. Now that I've saved it, I can do other really powerful things as well, though. I can do this, lyric data.shape. And what this will do when I run it, it now says, okay, there are 9 columns of data in lyric data and 377 rows. So this is the total amount of data I have. When I talk about rows and columns, so I'm going to get rid of the shape, run this again. 377 rows means there's 377 instances of these rap lyrics. Yeah, that's nice. And if we look across the top, there's 9 different dimensions that are being measured: URL, line, album release date, theme, sentiment, artist, song, candidate, and ID. So we have this 9 by 377 data frame that we're working with. Now, though, let's say that we actually want to look at over time if the general kind of sentiment of lyrics for just Donald Trump has changed or not. And this is what they actually kind of do in this article. So the first thing I need to do is I need to take lyric data and I need to change it so that it's only giving me data about Donald Trump. So the way we do this, we put a bracket. So these little square brackets, they're generally above the enter key on your keyboard. And I'm going to type the words lyric data again. And then I'm going to do another bracket. And in quotes, I'm going to write candidate. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying, look in the data, lyric data, right? So this is that data right here. Within that lyric data, look for the column candidate. So it's saying, look at this candidate column. And then I'm going to type in equals, quotes, Donald space Trump. And what this tells you is programmatically, you're saying this has to absolutely be exactly the same as Donald Trump. So what's going to happen here is it's going to go through this list of candidates, and it's going to say, oh, look at this. This row, the candidate row in lyric data, is equal to Donald Trump. So I'm going to save this row, and we're going to take out the rest. So let's go ahead and run this. And here we go. So now we have the same basic idea, except now we have only Donald Trump being saved here. Now, just like before, we need to save this, right? So all we've done here is tell it to print out all of the rows with Donald Trump. We haven't actually saved this as a data set that only contains Donald Trump. So I'm going to name this, again, you can name this whatever you want. I'm going to name mine Trump lyrics. And there we go. And so now it's lyric data. And when I run this, of course, nothing will happen, because now what I'm telling it to do is save this instead of actually printing it to the screen. Just like before, now that it's saved, I can actually look at the shape of this data. So trumplyrics.shape. And here you can see there's 268 observations. So that means in this data set, 268 of these actually mention Donald Trump. So it's a fairly, of the 377, a large percentage of those are mentioning Trump. Now, let's actually do an analysis. So we know how much data we have. We can look at our data frame. We can see kind of what's going on. But let's say that we actually want to see over time what the actual kind of sentiment of the words about Trump are. So let's look at our data frame again. So I'm just going to type in Trump lyrics. I'm going to go ahead and show that. And so here's our data frame. And what we have is we have a line, which is, Donald Trump and Donald Trump. Oh boy, I'm not going to read these because then I'll get fired. But we have all these lines that actually come from the songs. And what they've done is they've run an analysis called sentiment analysis on these lines. And what this tells you is the proportion of words that were positive versus negative versus neutral. So given the power to punch, soon to be paid like Donald Trump, right? This is interpreted as a positive sentiment. And so you can go through this and there will be some neutral, some positive, some negative, but we actually have classified each one of these as either being, something good about Donald Trump, bad about Donald Trump, or just mentioning his name. And so let's say, just as an example, that we want to then take, okay, every single year, so these album release dates, and we want to look at, for a given year, how many of these lines were neutral, positive, or negative. So this in Pandas is incredibly easy. So all we're going to do is, you see here we imported Pandas. We're going to use a what's called a submodule, but it's really just a program that's within Pandas called Crosstab. And I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to put Trump lyrics, and I'm going to put period album release date, and then comma Trump lyrics period sentiment. And so what I'm telling Pandas to do is go through all of this for me, create for every single year, so that's the album release date, give me the count of sentiments of all three of those different sentiments. This one line of code will take all of this data and do that analysis. So I'll go ahead and click play, and here we go. So you can see in 1989, there were 3 total songs that involved Donald Trump. Of those, 1 was neutral, 2 were positive. In 2016, there were a lot more. 1927 songs, only 4 were positive, 15 were negative, and 8 were neutral. And so you can immediately get this type of data. Now, this is an incredible, quick way to kind of explore your data, but it's kind of hard to interpret this at the end of the day, right? We actually want to get an idea of some kind of more specific things. So for example, what if I wanted to visualize this? And so I wanted to say, okay, over time, what does this chart actually look like? That's also really easy. Now it's going to require us to import a couple of additional things that we haven't kind of used yet, but it's not that many. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to import Seaborn, and then we're going to import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT. And so this is just another module. So just like Pandas, we're importing something called Seaborn. This is just code someone else wrote. Same thing, we're importing matplotlib.pyplot. Because this name is so long, here, for example, when we do pandas.readcsv or we do pandas.crosstab, we have to type the word pandas first. And so what you can do instead is you can say import blah, blah, blah as something else. So here, for example, we could do import pandas as pd. And that's very common. And then everywhere that pandas is written, you would type pd instead. Just lets you do a shorthand version. So here we're going to do this PLT. So both of these libraries are visualization libraries. They help you to visualize data like this data that we just created. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and build our crosstab just like we did before, but this time we're going to save it. So we're going to call this our Trump crosstab, and we're going to take the same crosstab we built here, but instead of printing it out, we're just going to save it as this variable Trump crosstab. So actually, instead of typing it down here, I'll just do it right here. So now I'm saving Pandas crosstab into Trump crosstab. So if I go ahead and run this, you'll see nothing happens because this is now saved here. If I type in Trump crosstab and I run this, bam, we now have that back. So I have my crosstab saved. Now what I want to do is actually want to create the plot out of this crosstab. So we'll do Trump crosstab.plot.bar. And we're going to do stacked equals true. And the stacked, you'll see in a moment, is because we have 3 different classes of data, positive, negative, and neutral. We'll add a legend. And then we will show our actual chart. Let's go ahead and run this. Just like that, here we go. So this shows us over time, for only lyrics that mention Trump. In red, unfortunately, there's positive, so you can change the colors, but we'll get into that in a later lesson. So the red here would be a positive, green would be neutral, and blue would be negative. So if you just look at the blue over time, you can see there were almost no negative references to Donald Trump until there was an uptick in 2015. Prior to 2015, almost everything was positive or neutral. And you can see that, of course, aligns very, very closely with his political career. There are other things that you can do if you want to try to further analyze these types of data frames. So for example, what if I want to know the year in which Donald Trump was the most kind of unfavored, when we really didn't like Donald Trump? So that's fairly straightforward. Let's look at our data frame again. So if I look at my Trump lyrics, it's going to take a quick look. And so I have a visual, and then you'll see a little scroll appeared here. Now I can scroll down to look at the table, because I'm now printing out two things. I'm telling the computer to print out this plot, and then after that, print out this data table. So if I look at the lyrics, I can say, okay, the album release date gives me an idea of what might be the most important, and then the sentiment gives me an idea of if it was positive or negative. If I look at my crosstab, I can see here, again, the same thing. We have the negative, neutral, and positive. So what I really want to know, if I want to know the year he was the least popular, is to look at the negative sentiment and find the year that had the largest number of negative sentiment. So to do that is very, very easy. We type in max, Trump crosstab, because that's where this data is stored, negative. And just like that, I see that the number 15 is the place where it was the most negative. And so let's just look up real quickly what year that actually was. So 15 right here. So in 2016, there were 15 occurrences with negative sentiment. And so we know that is the largest value because we found that using the max. And we know that is now in 2016. So this was a very, very brief introduction to how you can do data analysis in Python. This is just at the surface. So each session within this course, we'll be learning a new type of tool and a new type of analysis that you can use with this type of a toolkit. The type of coding that we did today is about as advanced as we will get. So if you are comfortable following along here today, then I think you'll be comfortable for the duration of the course.